capturing pain points. So there's probably a few of you that have known me quite a long time may have raised an eyebrow when you saw me talking about pain points at the drop-in, because you may remember that I've in the past I've been a little bit anti pain points. Is not maybe quite the right way to describe it, but in the past I've not found it the best way to capture information about processes and look for improvements. However, over the last 12 months, certainly, I've been doing a lot more work with teams or people who are looking at trying to identify automation opportunities. And for me, this is something I was found fairly, because having worked in this space for so long, it was something I found fairly easy to do. And it surprised me a little bit when I realized that if you're fairly new to this sort of work, it can be quite hard. So having looked at different ways to make that easier, this is one of the sort of approaches that we alighted on earlier last year. And so it's something I've been doing a lot more of. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean when I'm talking about a pain point, what I mean by a pain point. Talk a little bit about some of those, like how it helps us, some of those challenges with using it, and then as we normally do in these sessions, dive in and show you kind of some basics of how we do that within Spark. Okay, so very simply, what do I mean by a pain point? Again, trying to keep it really basic, something that impacts our ability to deliver the outcome of the process. So just thinking through a little bit more, things that make it difficult or slow us down or affect the quality of the output of the process. I haven't thought about it a bit more, and again, it's one of the things that comes up quite a lot. Things that make it difficult, slow us down, affects the quality of the output. Having done this for a little bit last year, I realized another key impact is the experience. Now, if quality's impact, that tends to be an impact on customer experience and vice versa, but employee experience is also really important. And when I get onto the next bit about actually talking about pain points is a really valuable tool for helping you to get buy-in from stakeholders when you're trying to drive change in the organization. But I realize that these things are all interconnected. So I'll tend to use describe it in one way, but actually, if quality is affected, it could be something else that's causing that and so on. But I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But it's just essentially when we're mapping out a process, what are the things that we see or experience that impact our ability to deliver the outcome of the process? I'm more than happy if anyone's got any other thoughts or suggestions to pop them into the chat as we go through around what a pain point is. But as I said, I just want to sort of touch on why it's useful, and again, I'll touch a little bit here on why I've not been a massive fan of using this language in the past, but again, why I'm doing it more now. So why it's useful. Typically, pain points are the symptoms of underlying problems. There's sometimes when you are mapping a process. So again, if you think you're in a workshop, go back to the definition I've just given, and you're asking people to describe what they do or how the process works. Now, normally people are quite happy or enthusiastic even about telling you what they do. And then very, very quickly, they'll start talking about all of the challenges that they have or the ideas that they have for making things better. Now, very often, the people doing the processes are not analysts as such. They're not thinking about what the root cause of these problems are that they're experiencing. So more often than not, when they're telling you about the problems they've got, they are really symptoms of an underlying problem. Now, it might be that you're looking at quite a simple process, or the stakeholder you're working with has spent a good deal of time thinking about why it's such a pain to do what it is, and have arrived at the at what the root cause of the problem is. But as I said, more often than not, it's symptoms. So I think that's important to remember, that it's not necessarily the root cause that someone's telling you about. That doesn't make it any less important, and I'll go on to talk about that in a second. But well, actually, very next point, which is it shows us what to address in order to get buy-in. So while it might not be the underlying root cause of the problem, if you can solve the symptom for many stakeholders, that's enough for them to go, yeah, I'm on board. If you can make my life easier for this thing, then I'll help to make it happen. They don't always need to understand or even care about what's the underlying problem is. I don't think that takes away the benefit of explaining it. I think it is worth working with stakeholders to work through to the root cause of the problem, because again, you might be changing the process significantly, which might be causing pain in other areas. And if you can help them understand, you're going to feel this pain because we're solving this problem in order to solve the other symptom you have, again, that can really help. But warning, a lot of stakeholders don't think that deeply into it. They're too focused on doing the right thing in their day job, and they aren't always thinking that deeply about the problem. So that's why the kind of initial pain points are useful to get in that context. Identifies benefits from addressing problems. So this might be additional benefits if you are working, if you're looking specifically at some sort of transformation, maybe it's a system change, and you're doing that from an organizational perspective, like we want better control over the finance processes, or we want to save time and money. Those are organizational benefits. They are very important. They're essential for the business case, for the change. But actually, when you get down to the low-level processes and you're talking with the day-to-day actors, they're often not going to care about those things unless it impacts them in some way. That's not strictly true. Most employees want to do a good job. They will care to some extent that everything works correctly so that they have a job at the end of the day, but they will think more about what they do on a day-to-day basis. And again, this is where pain points come in useful. And the last bit, it just helps them to make them feel like they're being listened to. As a tool for an analyst, as I said, it's about trying to get those symptoms, and then it helps us to kind of pull at those threads and identify what the root cause is. So challenges I've found with pain points. For me, I think there's a number of reasons why I wasn't that keen on them. I in my early days of this career, worked with a lot of consultants where we would start these exercises. So we might be going on to map processes, but we would start an exercise asking people to tell us their pain points, and then only after that would we go and map the process. And the problem that I saw there very early on was the first point I've made here, which is this idea of recency bias. So you ask people what's the problem with this process without digging into the process itself. And what they'll do is they'll tell you the last thing that was a problem for them. And that was the thing that's probably going to be most acute in their mind, but it might not be the biggest problem in that process and could be far from it. And therefore, what I saw start to happen is we would focus on the wrong things, and it gets kind of locked into your mind. You then go and map the process and you find more things wrong with it, but you've got this like first one or two issues that people brought up in your head, and you're always trying to find a way to prove that's like what's really behind the issues in the process. It takes a lot of thought to stop yourself from doing that. So I found that a bit of a challenge. The other reason, the kind of key reason for me, I've had this in the past, and interestingly, speaking to somebody about this the other day, is that it can come across as being negative or sort of here controversial. And by that, one of the examples that we had was when looking at a HR process. the HR team turned around and went, what do you mean pain points? There's nothing wrong with our process. It's perfectly fine. And that was it. That sort of set the tone for the conversation with that team. And if it's already hard enough trying to get people to buy into what you're doing, if you haven't even started kind of looking at the processes and that's the reaction you're getting, it's that much harder to get them in. So again, for that reason that I've found it, I've tended to steer away from using it. But as I said, over the last 12 months, I've been working with a lot of teams trying to help them look at existing process and identify opportunities for maybe general process improvement or automation. And that kind of led me to thinking more about things like lean waste. But I found lean waste can be, for some people, quite a challenging thing to explain, for them to get their heads around and then to be able to explain to stakeholders. And so I found using pain points as a lens onto which we can look at a process that might seem otherwise okay and try to identify things that we could improve. I made a couple of other notes there just in terms of if for any reason you come across this situation where you think people might react negatively or feel that there's nothing wrong with their process when you start talking to them, then you can ask them, you can position it in a different way, like what's slowing you down, how do you think you could do more with the team and the time you've got, or if you had $100 million, what would you for your department or team, what would you spend it on? And it's interesting because actually they start saying the same thing, but they just turn it around and they go, well, actually, we'd get a new system to do this because that would help us do this quicker. And so they're just thinking about it in a different way. Okay, that's enough of me talking about some of my experiences. Let's go in and just have a look at how we've been doing it, as I said, over this past 12 months in Spark. Many of you may have already seen this example before, so apologies if it's familiar to you. But essentially, just in a very, very simple way, I've been using custom fields. So if you remember, on an activity, click the attachment, and I've created a custom field called a pain point. So let me go into edit mode, and I will add another one and just quickly talk through the custom fields, so we're clear what we're talking about. So custom fields on an attachment of an activity. Custom fields is the tool we use for quickly capturing additional information about a step in a process in a slightly more structured way. So we're not going as far as to create a form with different fields that we pre-format in. It's just, I need to quickly capture a simple piece of information, but I want to be able to report on it very easily. Okay. When I click add a custom field here, I've got a custom field I've created called pain points. If you don't have one, you can go and you click the create new custom field button down there, and then you call it pain points. I can't remember whether I've shared this already, but I will share this custom field through the app share and the template library so that it will be available to you to add to your own workspace rather than having to recreate it if you want a copy of it. But if I just add another one, so again, just remember with custom fields, what's valuable is you can add multiple custom fields to a step in a process. So again, if you've got multiple pain points you want to capture against a particular step, you can do as well. Now remember where custom field works, we've got these fields are both optional. So both the grouping and the comment field is optional. If you simply just wanted to tag a step in a process with something like pain points, you could create a custom field and not even have to fill any of these out, just click confirm. And the benefit of that is, again, you can report, so show me everywhere in a process where there's a pain point without knowing any more details about that pain point. I could run a report, so show me all the activities that have a pain point. And in the reporting tool at workspace level, you can also filter by custom fields as well. So you could say, I want to run a report across these 10 processes, but I'm only interested in the steps in those processes that have pain points on them. for example. So again, even without putting anything in, custom fields are quite useful. So again, grouping field just allows you to kind of categorize the steps, categorize your entries into the custom field. Now, what I've done here with the pain points, as I said, I alluded to this sort of relationship with lean waste, and I'm using this in a very similar sort of way. What I'm doing is trying to help. There's two things I'm trying to do here. One is to categorize the pain points, and I'll show you how that's useful in a second from an analytics point of view. So again, but just from like doing your investigation, your root cause analysis, grouping them together, it's quite useful, because often you can find if you get a lot of one, it's because there's a particular type of problem that's underlying it. The other reason for doing it, which, as I said, is kind of related to the lean waste approach, is if you're looking at a process, and this goes back to my example of helping people find opportunities for automation. If you're looking at a process and you're not necessarily sure what's wrong with the process, and people are sort of sitting there smiling, going, "Oh, this process is fine," it's a lens onto which you can shine on a particular step in a process and just have a conversation about it. You open up you click here with the list of things and go, okay, do you think there's any, do you feel like you're ever wasting time when you're doing this, or you're doing something that someone else is doing, you're duplicating effort? Do you ever find that you're sitting around waiting because something else you having to wait for something else before you can start this? Do mistakes get made in this particular step? Is it a poor experience? Very deliberately generic here. It could be an employee experience, patient experience, customer experience. It's just about, is what's happening here creating a poor experience? And is it an unnecessary cost? So again, hopefully for those of you familiar with lean waste, you can see it's sort of fairly similar, but just tried to simplify the language a little bit. But it's more about prompting people to think about what sort of problem that we might have here. And then what we do is you select the group and then just describe what the pain point is in there. I'm just not going to type much more in there, but just you describe or put a description into the comment field, click confirm, and that gets saved against that, against the box. So again, it's just like a kind of waste walk in lean, right? You can just go through and talk about the pain points. Now, often what many of you use Spark a lot in process workshops, I'm sure you're doing this sort of thing as you're mapping. So people are telling you about the process, and then they go, oh, and then at this step we always have to do this 2 times because this thing breaks or whatever. Then you can capture them as you go. But it does work as well if you've already got the process mapped and you just want to walk through it and put those lenses on. One thing I would just say about these categories, which is exactly the same argument I would say if you're using lean waste, is sometimes the same kind of pain point. Sometimes you go, well, actually it's wasted time, or it's unnecessary cost, and it's, we're wasting time because we're duplicating effort, or it's an unnecessary cost because we're wasting time. Don't get bogged down in those questions. It's not that important, right? It's what was the first thing that sort of came to mind, and just go with that. Don't waste time talking about whether it's one or the other. You can always do that later when you're kind of doing, if you're doing some sort of analysis later on, but in the workshop there and then with stakeholders, just go with whatever comes first. Keep it simple. It's more about capturing the pain point. I should have probably just touched on there as well. You notice that my pain points I've got are different colors. When you actually add the groupings into the custom field, you can specify a background color for it. If you've already created the categories in your custom field, you can go into the admin panel in the workspace, go to custom fields, find the custom fields, and then you can customize the color behind it. The reason it's useful to do that, it's not essential. The reason it's useful to do that is when we use it in this context, is we use the forms visibility tool. Sorry, I did that very quickly, so let me just go back. Here on the left, the forms visibility tool to show the pain points on the process diagram. So you'll see wherever I've got a pain point, it will then make it visible on the process. Sometimes this can be really useful. It's like something you don't always want on the process diagrams, but if you want to look at and just see, do we have lots around a particular step part of the process, or in this case you get a sense very quickly that there's quite a lot of wasted time and effort type pain points on this particular process. So again, really useful for just that visibility. Great if you're telling a story, walking somebody through the process afterwards, going, look at, we get all these pain points at these parts in the process. The other thing that again is really, I think is really useful here is if I go into the business tools and use the analytics, again, hopefully most of you are aware that when you use custom fields in an activity, it generates some visual analytics in the analytics section. So if I click on there and I'll open my pain points custom field. So again, really useful when you're sort of trying to investigate, trying to work out where that root cause of the problem might be. This is not telling you the answer, but it's kind of giving you different views and helping you kind of give you insights into where to look next. Here it gives you a quick view. Look, most of the pain points are clustering around a particular role in this case. When it comes to systems, I can see most of them are clustering around a particular system as well. This is a very simple example process, but again, really interesting sometimes when you see that. And it might be that it's asking another question, which is taking you down somewhere to help you find the root cause. Sometimes it's confirming what you suspected as well, which can be quite useful. The other thing I was just going to show you here, we also show this grouping. So we show a pie chart based on the grouping fields you've used and the count of pain points. Again, colors are the ones based on the colors I used on the grouping itself on the custom field. But where I found this useful is when you've gone through and done the pain points, it gives you a quick view of like what's the key benefits you're going to get from this, or it helps you tell a story about the types of benefits that you're going to get and which ones might have the biggest impact. Often when I'm talking about benefits here, because we're going into sort of quite a micro level in terms of looking at those pain points, this goes back to what I said before about you're starting to build benefits for the individuals or the actors within the process to help show them how it's going to help them in future. And I think just probably just worth saying that what this is all about is, as I say, trying to find those pain points, understand what the potential benefits are, capture those against the process, start to do a bit of work on your root cause analysis, and tell a story with the pain points. Obviously, this is a small part to a much bigger process where you then go off and do further analysis, identify what the recommendations are on building your business case and so on.